Were approached by the U.S. to
14 people deported from the U.S. to Ghana have all been sent to their home countries, Ghana's foreign minister said Monday. There are 13 Nigerians and 1 Gambian.
That West African nationals.
We are only helping our brothers and sisters. We are coming in purely on humanitarian grounds, expressing Pan-African solidarity, which Ghana is famed for. So we should rather be seen as a country that wants to look out for its fellow Africans. That is why we made it clear to the Americans that we will not accept $1. We don't want any, because it comes with some financial burden, hosting them, taking care of their accommodation and all of that before they transition to their country.
The men say their deportation was illegal. News of their expulsion to Ghana emerged last week, sparking a lawsuit by U.S. lawyers.
We believe that the plaintiffs' deportations to Ghana did not comply with principles of due process. These people were not told where they were going to be taken. They were just awoken in the middle of the night inside their cells in ICE detention centers across the U.S. and taken to a single ICE detention center and then put on a plane without being told where they were being taken.
Nigeria's government said it was not briefed about its nationals being sent to Ghana and that previously it had received Nigerians deported directly from the U.S.
All right. Welcome to This Week in Africa. Today, we are talking about some breaking news, as you saw. Did Ghana betray Africa, accepting Trump's deported West Africans in this controversial deal? We'll talk about that and more. Before we do, we like to do our introductions. I will turn it over to my co-host before I introduce myself.
Hello, my name is Gloria Ayo, and I like to call myself an African storyteller. I'm the founder and host of the African Story, and happy to be here.
Of course, happy to have you. And I am Joe Hatagwa, the founder and CEO of Authentic African. Our goal is to get people to visit, move, and invest on the continent of Africa. And we're bridging the gap between Africans living on the continent and Africans in the diaspora. So today we have a number of different stories we're going to be talking about. Of course, as I mentioned, we are going to be talking about this immigration deal where West African migrants were sent to Ghana. We are also going to be talking about Chinese trafficking conviction in South Africa, 7 Chinese nationals sentenced to 20 years. Burkina Faso's visa policy will be discussed. We'll also talk about Morocco's gold discovery and what the implications of that are. And there's a Kenyan unaliving case that we will be discussing. And then the last major critical update we will discuss is South Sudan's vice president charged with treason and crimes against humanity. So before we get into the rest of those stories, let's get into this first one. So as you saw in that video, Ghana's foreign minister was actually pushing back on criticism that the decision was an endorsement of US President Trump's migration policy, saying that Ghana accepted the third country deportees purely on humanitarian grounds. They also mentioned Pan-Africanism, and that is what Ghana is known for. Now, just a little bit more about how citizens on the ground have been thinking about it. It seems as though citizens question why Ghana agreed to accept the deportees, while others see it as a move, as a strategic step towards strengthening Ghana's ties with the United States. Some people agree with that, some people disagree with that. So let's play a video. We'll have some more commentary on the other side.
Nabil Ahmed Rufai joins us now from Accra, Ghana. For more on this, Nabil, Ghana becomes the fourth African nation to receive deported migrants from the US. What's the reaction in the country so far?
Well, Penina, the reaction has been mixed so far because the president made this announcement just last night, and people are trying to digest what really this is for Ghana, because they do not understand why Nigeria would not want to take these deportees, but then Ghana has decided to do that and then send them back to Nigeria. People are worried about the kind of cost that the country would incur by taking up these deportees from the US. On the other hand, others are also welcoming this, saying that Ghana is trying to boost its relation with the US, so this could be a good deal for the government. But reactions have been really mixed, and people are trying to digest it. When you go to social media, people are talking about it. Also, on the local radio stations and television stations, discussions are really centered on this latest announcement by President, and people are trying to understand what its implications would have really for Ghana.
Well, Nabil, you mentioned that for some of those who are concerned, the concerns have to do with the cost for Ghana. So do we know what's in it for Ghana following this deal with the US?
Indeed, Penina, we do not know the details of the deal that Ghana has signed with the US president because the information is quite fresh. But you know that what Ghana stands to benefit from accepting this from the US is that relations are going to deepen. And you heard the president say that Ghana has already been slapped with tariffs. So perhaps trade relations are going to improve because Ghana has agreed to this deal from the US. And we just look forward to see how this deal will really pan out for the country in its own interest.
All right. So, Gloria, your thoughts on this deal to accept the migrants and then send the migrants to their home countries? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Thank you, Joe. I mean, for Ghana agreeing to take third country nationals, on one side, they may see, some might see it as humanitarian, but there's also a risk of being complicit in accepting people that have been deemed illegal, right? And some people would see those deportations as illegal. Domestically, this might not be helpful politically. If citizens or migrants believe that their rights are being ignored or that Ghana is acting without transparency or oversight, there can be harm. So there could be a distrust toward governments that are seen as collaborating with foreign powers, in this case, the US. There's also expense and governance burdens, which we have discussed quite exhaustively in the past with these third country deportations, right. Because it entails having detention facilities, there have to be legal proceedings, you have to ensure that there's humane treatment of the migrants. There is a risk of stigma against returnees, among other things. We have noticed the pattern of sending asylum seekers or protected people to third countries without their home countries. So this will likely reshape how courts and even public opinion define legal protections. But for Ghana, the risk is international reputation if allegations of detention, abuse, or human rights violations are being substantiated.
Yeah, well put. And I'll say, and I don't know, are you able to hear me? I just want to make sure my audio is good. Okay. So yeah, I mean, look, my thoughts are these. I think when Muhammad took office, I think one of the things that people were really excited about was what seemed like a closeness with the AES, and it felt for many people that the route that Ghana was going to be going was more towards Pan-Africanism in the kind of the vein of a Kwame Nkrumah, the first president of Ghana after colonialism and then post-colonialism, or a Thomas Sankara, who, you see Ibrahim Traore kind of taking up after. I think this particular move perplexes people because it seems like if it is the idea to strengthen the partnership with the U.S., I do feel like many people are a little bit concerned by taking that stance as opposed to one of specifically Pan-Africanism. Now, I understood the phrase that he used, and he described saying that the foreign minister mentioning that's what that was Ghana is known for, right? Is Pan-Africanism. And even the flag colors are like the Pan-African colors. And Kwame Nkrumah was a huge Pan-Africanist. Martin Luther King was at his inauguration, for example. However, I don't really totally understand it if these migrants are being sent to their country of origin anyway, right? If they're being patriated into Ghana, or and there's a process of having them become a pathway to citizenship in Ghana, I think that to me feels a lot more like Pan-Africanism, right? I don't know who these people are and why they're being deported, right? In some cases, in the past, they've talked about people who have been looking for asylum. In other cases, it's been folks that have been deemed as criminals for having a criminal record. In general, if you overstay a visa, or if you are there and haven't been granted asylum, you are still deemed a criminal. So that's one of the challenges with the U.S. policy around that. But yeah, I think there's some questions around how this can be seen as Pan-Africanist and Pan-Africanism if they're not gaining citizenship in Ghana to some degree, right? And just like, residency, citizenship, something to that effect. And so that part is just a bit confusing to me. I will say I'm happy to hear that they did mention they weren't taking any money from the United States. Whereas previously, when we talked about other countries, that's a part of the deal, right? For them to take on migrants from other countries, they generally are agreeing to some kind of financial, some kind of financial benefit for taking on these migrants. So, on one hand, they're not taking any finances, at least in terms of what they said. And on the other hand, it's a little bit confusing, I think, for many. That they're being sent to their home countries. It's just they're coming through Ghana. It doesn't feel like that really aligns with the messaging of Pan-Africanism. That's what I would say to that. And then I think the last thing I'll just add is, when it comes to migration in Ghana right now, there's been a lot of talk in this country about other immigrants in Ghana. And I'm in Ghana currently, right? There's been a lot of conversations about Nigerians in the country. We covered that previously. And so I don't know if this was politically wise, knowing that there's a growing sentiment already around migrants, and that hasn't been really well communicated, and they haven't really quelled those concerns of the people, which I think they should be. And I think there should be a discussion about how, large parts of the economy here are migrants, like many other countries. That's just kind of how it works a lot of times. And so I don't think that has fully made it to the people. And so I think something like this is probably just furthering those narratives. And I don't think that this is this is not helpful for, politically within the country. And I'm not really 100% sure how it benefits the Pan-African movement. Now, tariffs were discussed and were mentioned by this last reporter. And he did say that the president mentioned tariffs previously. And so, at the end of the day, Ghana still does have a significant amount of trade with the United States. And so the only way I could see this being something that's beneficial is if the idea that the tariffs would be reduced and or removed for doing so. And I guess that is yet to be seen, and we will find out sooner than later. So with that, we'll move on to the next story. A court in Johannesburg sentenced 7 Chinese nationals last Wednesday to terms of 20 years in prison each for trafficking people from Malawi and forcing them to work at a factory in South Africa. The group was convicted on the 25th of February of this year for trafficking 91 undocumented Malawians, nationals from 2017 to 2019. So, you know, we talk a lot about Chinese nationals living on the continent of Africa, and many businesses have been started, right? Factories, there's like a bridge and road initiative, a number of different solar farms, right? This is the dark side of what can happen from time to time with many foreign nationals in country. So we're going to play this video and we'll have some commentary on the other side.
A court in Johannesburg sentenced 7 Chinese nationals on Wednesday to a term of 20 years in prison each for trafficking people from Malawi and forcing them to work at a factory in South Africa. Some family members of the accused rejected the accusations and say that they were wrongfully convicted.
Who gonna take care of it? You know, there's never human trafficking, I tell you. This just a factory, and they treated those workers, those Malawians, very bad because this boss, it's all his idea. You know, he doesn't allow them to get out this factory, and he just sending them orders. These take his orders, and then the orders is getting to those Malawian workers.
The group was convicted on February 25 of trafficking 91 undocumented Malawian nationals from 2017 to 2019 to work at a cotton fabric factory in Village Deep, an industrial area in the south of Johannesburg.
Well, they must know that we're taking these issues very serious. Government is working every day towards rooting out all these issues. Many of these companies, as I 2 weeks back, were in Free State, and the expectation was that they are just going to pay money and bribe people, then they will get away with murder. Even on this case, we have heard that the expectation was that they are going to bribe officials, they are going to bribe whoever, and they will get away with murder because it's what has been happening. And I want to say it again, the era of impunity has ended. We need to save and protect our country and protect our workers in this republic.
The Chinese nationals had been arrested on November 12, 2019, when police raided the factory and found the Malawian confined under inhumane conditions with armed guards controlling their movements.
All right. So, Gloria, what are your thoughts on these convictions and the trafficking, and also what the daughter of one of the accused or one of the convicted said?
I mean, it is the audacity to try something like this in an African country, something you wouldn't dare try in the West. You know, it actually reminds me of a documentary I saw years ago where some Chinese national was exploiting children in Malawi, having them say really horrible racist things in his language, and then basically selling it. I mean, there was an audience, there was a crowd for these people on the dark web somewhere. And I remember how disturbing that was. You know, basically, a case like this shows the loopholes in our systems and how certain people have chosen to come to our continent to try to exploit them. We talked about the San community not long ago. Mm-hmm. Whatever their reasons are, be it financial, be it some sort of twist in their minds, these exploitative moves really just reinforce certain negative stereotypes about our continent. And I am very impressed to be, you know, if we're going to give the South African government its props, I am very impressed with the handling of this, in that this is actually not one of those cases that have gone unresolved. And as far as Malawi is concerned, labor migration under deceptive schemes, I mean, really throughout Africa. But Malawi also has cases where people are being promised work abroad. And, you know, people are desperate. So they go from Malawi, I mean, even from Zimbabwe, Mozambique, all these countries, to work in, you know, they're looking for work in agriculture, they're looking for work in mining, in factories, and they're being given all these promises. And when these things happen, because there are many cases that have gone unreported, you know, or even when there's prosecution, the penalties are not that severe. So even though there are laws and policies against trafficking with instruments like the Prevention and Combating of Trafficking in Person Act of 2013 in South Africa, sadly, many cases go unreported or delayed. But this particular case shows that there is effective coordination. The prosecution looks successful. Convictions are strong. The perpetrators were held accountable. It may, and hopefully it does, set a precedent, because migration from Malawi to South Africa is common. Again, given economic disparity, climate pressure, lack of jobs. So many are migrating, hoping for factory work, even if the conditions are precarious. Employers, in some cases, exploit this vulnerability because they know that the people have undocumented status and are desperate. So for Malawi, losing people to trafficking, especially minors, you have children involved. This is a serious national issue. Culturally, it feeds xenophobia and stigma. And the fact that people are undocumented, however, should not remove their labor or human rights, especially again, since there are children involved. So hopefully this is an opportunity for Malawi and South Africa to strengthen their cooperation and push for better regulation.
Yeah, well put. I mean, there's a couple of things that I'll address from that video. The daughter of one of the convicted mentioned that this all came down from their boss and they were just following orders, right? I know culturally it might be difficult to understand, and this is a job that these people are taking. So, it's just, you have to wonder how you can continue to work for a company that makes you do these things to people, armed guards and inhumane conditions. Right now, I will say factories in China have been known for substandard working environments to begin with their own people, right? Foxconn, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Foxconn, but they help to put together iPhones. Right, they're one of the third-party companies that help put together iPhones, and they had to put, those nets, those nets that you see at a circus when somebody's doing a tightrope, and if they fall into a net so they don't hit the ground. They put nets outside of Foxconn's windows because people were jumping and unaliving themselves. Right, so they have harsh and substandard working conditions in factories there. Imagine now what they're doing in other countries where nobody's watching what they're doing. And this isn't everyone. This isn't all Chinese on the continent. This isn't most. But in general, there aren't very many, unions, labor workforces, advocates for people to be able to ensure that these things don't happen. There was a raid done. Somebody must have tipped them off. A raid was done. And luckily, an example was made. 20 years might seem harsh for 2 years worth of trafficking for some people, but I think the idea of that was to ensure that people understand, as the labor minister mentioned, it's to make an example out of it and to let people know that it will not be tolerated. And so, as you said, I hope that they work on better trade relations and migration, relations. Yeah. And then also too, I do hope that there are, more enforceable labor conditions to ensure that anybody who's starting a company and building a factory goes through some kind of checks and balances before they're able to open up a factory like what we just saw. So in the recent past, many immigrants have complained that they were sent to countries not native known to them. Okay, this is based on an earlier discussion.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, look, I think that those are my thoughts there. I mean, look, I have seen, I'm here in Ghana at the moment. I have seen a building being built, and I saw a number of Ghanaians employed, even though I could see Chinese characters. They all were wearing their hats and their outfits, and they seem to be working under standard working conditions, what you can expect to see anywhere in the world, above board, from what I could see. I didn't speak to any of them, but from what I could see. And that's what you'd like to see everywhere. Unfortunately, you have things like this persist, and more than you think. And it's not just the Chinese. As you mentioned, there are other foreign nationals doing similar things. And because there isn't much regulation, to my earlier point, this continues to persist on the continent of Africa. So, obviously we'd like to see this change. And one way we can see that change, if more of us begin to do business on the continent, because I can't imagine those who are watching, who are having these discussions, would ever do anything like what we just saw happening to these Malawians. So with that, we'll move on to the next story. So Burkina Faso is now free to visit for all African nationals. So Ouagadougou says it's waiving fees on entry visas for citizens of African countries. So this has been much discussed, and now it looks like we are finally here. So we'll play this video and we'll have some commentary on the other side.
Burkina Faso is now free to visit for all African nationals. Ouagadougou says it's waiving fees on entry visas for citizens across the continent. The only requirement for Africans wanting to visit Burkina Faso is to fill out an online form and have their application approved. Until now, a tourist visa cost just under $100, while a business visa ran to about $165. The country's Minister of Security, Mahamadou Sana, said the measure was aimed at strengthening the historic bonds of brotherhood between African people as part of a pan-Africanist agenda of interim President Ibrahim Traoré. Sana said the move would also help to boost tourism to the West African nation, promote Burkinabe culture, and improve Burkina Faso's visibility abroad. But Sana stressed that free does not mean exempt. Visas haven't been abolished, and visitors still have to obtain a valid visa in order to enter the country.
All right. So thoughts on Burkina Faso making it visa-free to enter their country for all African nationals?
Yes, of course. Many Africans love the idea of freedom when it comes to visas because it does feel restrictive. But Burkina Faso already had visa-free entry for many West African citizens under ECOWAS protocols, but removing visa fees applies beyond the West African bloc to all African nationals. Other African countries, as we've discussed in recent years, have also earned visa or travel restrictions, or rather, they've reduced these restrictions for other Africans. Kenya comes to mind, Ghana, Rwanda, and having Burkina Faso joining them is actually, I mean, it's noteworthy. Now, in their own cases, it might be e-visa systems, just whatever can make entry easier for Africans is what we're calling for. And on a Pan-African side of things, this is really good because it allows free movement, which we need for tourism and for trade. Politically, it shows that Traoré is committed to Pan-African ideals and unity for Africans. I mean, he's always shown resistance to colonial legacies, and he's always distanced himself from any sort of Western influence. And again, tourism, I mean, this can help attract visitors. It can increase cultural exchange. There could be visitors from the diaspora. I mean, Traoré is very popular globally. It could make commerce, blossom, even though we do have to factor in the potential for loss of revenue from visa fees that, they're no longer charging. But we have to keep that in mind against the gains made from tourism and trade. But I do believe, as long as it's properly implemented, that tourism and trade will yield way more than those visa fees were yielding. And I think most importantly, many Africans have felt hurt by these borders and seeing the enforcements of visas. I mean, they've seen those enforcements as something that reminds them of the colonial era or barriers that treat Africans differently abroad. So this is symbolically powerful, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, I would say this seems more along the lines of Pan-Africanism than the story we started with, right? Look, the idea of making travel across the continent of Africa visa-free, I think is important. Now, they did say you still have to, a free visa. You do still have to apply for a visa, right? Which is smart to make sure that people apply before entering a country, but removing the visa fees altogether, I think is huge. And to your point on the visa revenue, I think that now that they've taken back the gold mines and some of the other natural resources, and that's now state owned, I do think that that's probably where they're looking to make up some of those revenues through the trade, through some of those natural resources that are now either partially or fully state owned by Burkina Faso. And so I'd like to see more programs like this around the continent of Africa. The example I always give, and everyone always gives, is, in Europe, in fact, as an American, you do not need a visa to go to most of Europe, if not all of Europe, right? You can, and Europe had the European Union, and all of Europe you can travel through. If you ever talk to someone who grew up in the UK or who grew up in France, they've seen all the countries in Europe. It's just normal for them to go on holiday and they travel around. On the continent of Africa, it already costs you more than it costs anywhere else to travel between two places, to travel between two countries. Not to mention, you also have the visa fees to enter. Not to mention that many times they require you to go through hoops to get a visa to enter their countries. So, this is a step in the right direction. I hope more countries approve programs like this. As you mentioned, ECOWAS had the ability for freedom of movement, but as you guys might all remember, the AES that blocked those three countries, Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali, exited ECOWAS, and there was always confusion about whether or not you could enter or leave those countries with your West African passport. Now, from what we've heard from Ibrahim Traore and Goita and the leader of Niger, was that you could actually travel in and out of those countries with your West African passport. But it wasn't official until at least we're seeing at least this visa process that still needs to be done to be able to enter for anybody. I still don't know what that means for West Africans, because it was devoid of visas. You could just show up and just have your passport and just walk right in without a visa. So I wonder what that means for other West Africans. And I think that that's something that we'll have to dig in a little bit deeper on. But for those of us who are dual citizens, of any country on the continent, I think this is really interesting, and we'd like to see more of it. All right, so moving on to the next story. Morocco has made a major gold discovery, identifying 35 high-grade quartz veins with gold concentrations up to 30 G per T. I think that's grams per ton. Currently producing just over 100 kilograms annually, Morocco is a minor player in Africa's gold market, far behind leaders like Ghana, South Africa, Mali, and Sudan. Preliminary estimates suggest that the new deposits could yield 3 to 5 million ounces, potentially elevating Morocco into the continent's top 10 producers. The discovery marks a turning point for Morocco's mining sector, boosting export potential, attracting investments, and strengthening its role among Africa's key mineral producers. So we're going to play this video and give you some commentary on the other side.
And our last story for today comes from North Africa, where Morocco has struck gold, literally. A major gold discovery could transform the country's mining sector and its position in the African and global market. Now, geologists have discovered high-grade gold deposits in Morocco's Julemin region, with grades reaching up to 30 grams per ton, which is considered world-class. Now, mining professionals have identified 34 quartz veins, each showing signs of rich gold content. Preliminary estimates suggest the region could yield between 3 and 5 million ounces of gold, and this can vastly outstrip Morocco's current annual output of just over 100 kilograms. The discovery emerged from systematic exploration combining geological mapping, targeted trenching, and shaft sampling to access fresh materials beneath the weathered surface zones.
All right. So your thoughts on this discovery in Morocco?
Yay for Africa. I mean, historically, Morocco has not been known to be a major gold power. So that's why this is really, really a big deal. Morocco is more into phosphates, and it's actually one of the world's top phosphate producers. Even, they also have minerals like lead, they have silver, zinc, manganese, industrial minerals. Gold, it's not that they haven't had gold at all, but it's existed in small scale. They haven't been in the top tier of producers like Ghana, South Africa, Mali, or Sudan. But these kinds of discoveries, especially with this level, this high grade quality, are actually relatively rare, and of course will attract high interest. Deposits of 3 to 5 million ounces, that's meaningful. That's huge. I mean, many large African mines have reserves in that range or higher. But for Morocco to be able to join that is major for Morocco. A lot of African nations are trying to shift from relying on this narrow set of exports towards things that are more diversified, things that will, like higher value mining, things like that. Ghana and Sudan have become big gold producers. Even Burkina Faso, as we know, Tanzania, Guinea. This is a great market to actually tap into. Many of those gains were built over time via exploration, foreign investment, sometimes with social and environmental costs. But right now, we can say Morocco is actually comparable in scale to all these countries. And there is a huge potential for job creation, because now there's exploration, there's extraction, there's going to be processing. It's going to be great for downstream industries. Major opportunity for Morocco. And please, I hope the government is able to take advantage of this to help increase its export earnings and even strengthen its weight in investment. Congratulations, Morocco.
Yes, congratulations to Morocco. I think this is a step towards self-sufficiency. This should be great for trade in the region. We will see how it goes. I hope that, Morocco, with this knowledge, increases and expands its trade with the sub-Saharan region. And, we hope to see more of that. I will leave it there.
Yes.
All right.
Please.
So with that, we do want to move on to the next story. So Kenya's Director of Public Prosecutions believes there's enough evidence to link a specific subject to the murder of Agnes Wanjiru. So right now, Kenyan court issues arrest warrant for a British soldier in a 2012 unaliving case. Wanjiru was last seen with the British soldier at a hotel that was the home of the British Army training unit in Kenya. So we are going to play a video and give you some commentary on the other side.
Kenya, a Nairobi court has issued an arrest warrant for a British national in connection with the death of Agnes Wanjiru, a young mother whose body was discovered in a septic tank more than a decade ago. Wanjiru was killed in 2012 after she was last seen with a British soldier at a hotel in Nanyuki, where the UK maintains the headquarters for its British Army training unit in Kenya. The Office of the Director of Public Prosecution said evidence links the suspect, a UK citizen, to her murder. High Court Judge Alexander Muteti ruled there was probable cause for the arrest and ordered the suspect to surrender and face trial in Kenya. The prosecutor's office has since announced it will begin extradition proceedings in order for the suspect to be tried in Kenya. A British government spokesperson acknowledged the decision, saying the prosecutor's office had determined that a British national should face trial over Wanjiru's death. The UK government added it's absolutely committed to helping secure justice, but declined to comment further, citing ongoing legal proceedings. Now, for decades, the UK has trained its troops in central Kenya, but the Army's presence has left deep scars. In 2002, the UK paid out millions to victims of unexploded munitions. The Nanyuki's base reputation has also been stained by allegations of rape and murder of the local population. Amnesty International once reported over 600 claims against British soldiers for sexual assault. Meanwhile, the 2012 killing of Agnes Wanjiru remains unresolved, despite a British soldier reportedly confessing to fellow soldiers. But many businesses in Nanyuki, where the British Army training unit in Kenya is based, see it as an economic lifeline. They rely heavily on soldiers' spending, and the UK government claims its presence has injected nearly £32 million into the local economy since 2016.
Thoughts on this arrest warrant that gets us closer to solving what seemed like a cold case?
I just want to point out that Agnes had a daughter. I want to point out that the family has suffered long years without closure. You know, that particular hotel, you know, linked to those soldiers, the allegations around the soldiers, the perceived or real cover-ups, leaks about soldiers mocking the unaliving of this woman, all contribute to trauma. They all contribute to mistrust. Many people in Kenya actually see this as yet another case where the powerful are able to evade justice, especially when they are from foreign forces. Cases of alleged crimes by foreign military personnel stationed abroad are not new. We've addressed some of it on this show. The colonial past, military base agreements, extraterritorial jurisdiction or lack thereof have produced many instances of alleged abuse, sometimes prosecuted, often with delays or no prosecution at all. One historical Kenyan precedent is the case of Frank, I think his last name is pronounced Sonstrom, way back in 1980. He was a US Navy sailor who was involved in the unaliving of a woman named Monica Njeri in Mombasa while he was on shore leave. That case was controversial. This man pleaded guilty to manslaughter rather than straight up unaliving. He received a very light punishment. Then he returned to the US. The way that case was handled is actually often cited in Kenya as an example of foreign servicemen allegedly being treated lightly in criminal proceedings. Now, Kenya has in the past had to deal with allegations of misconduct. It's had to deal with allegations of SA, etc., by these soldiers that are attached to foreign militaries. Yep. The Wanjiru case is standing out because of leaks of WhatsApp and Facebook group chats about 4 years ago that allegedly showed these soldiers mocking her after she got unalived. This caused an outrage, and it's actually helped to reopen the case. Now, legally, Kenya does have a sovereign right to investigate and prosecute unalivings that happen on its soil, even if it's by foreign nationals. But I have to point out that diplomatically, the UK has for years resisted or delayed cooperation, even though more recently the UK Defense Secretary has met with Agnes's family and expressed full support for Kenyan authorities' investigations. But we need way more than that. We need those men to go back to Kenya and face the law, because it is not okay. If we do not have this taken care of, this pattern will continue. It is not okay to come to our continent and unalive our people. Enough is enough.
Well put. And I think the other way around, they'd be extradited post haste to the country that they would be tried and convicted in their prison system, and then sent back, no longer allowed to be a citizen of that country. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I'm glad that they've issued the arrest warrant. I hear that the British government says they were willing to cooperate, so I hope that that is the case. But it's sad to see that, you know, so many of these cases and complaints had been made to people that are meant to protect people, right? But they obviously were doing much more harm than good. Yeah, so I hope that he is extradited to Kenya, is tried and in an expeditious manner, and then also made an example of, just like those gentlemen that were trafficking the workers from Malawi in South Africa. All right, on to the last major headline that we're going to review today. South Sudan charges its vice president with treason. The first vice president faces charges of treason and other serious crimes that based on the local authorities. So as of last Thursday, they mentioned that he was tried for treason and a few others, or he will be tried for treason. Those are the charges. So I'm going to play a video and we will have some commentary on the other side.
Machar has been under house arrest since March. The government he's a part of accused him of subversive activities against President Salva Kiir. Pro-government forces have been fighting militias and other armed groups they say are loyal to Machar, who serves as the country's vice president under the terms of a delicate peace accord signed in 2018. In addition to treason, Machar and 7 others face charges of murder, conspiracy, terrorism, and crimes against humanity. The charges stem from a violent incident in March when a militia known as the White Army overran a garrison of government troops, killing its commanding officer and others. Bringing criminal charges against Machar is likely to further destabilize South Sudan, which has barely recovered from a long civil war in 2013.
All right, so your thoughts on this story?
Yeah, I mean, this tension has been, there's been tension between these Kiir and Machar since the civil war ended in 2018. Human rights groups are calling for this trial to actually be fair, for it to be transparent, for them to respect due process. People are warning that this may threaten the fragile peace agreement, which I'll go into in just a bit. So the conflict could get renewed. Rick, Machar has been a central figure in South Sudanese politics for decades. He's been involved in rebel movements during Sudan's civil wars, then in the South Sudan civil war after independence. In 2013, a political dispute between him and President Kiir escalated into full civil war. That war lasted between 2013 and 2018. So there was an enormous loss of life. There was displacement, a lot of tribalism. The 2018 peace agreement actually provided some sort of power sharing arrangement, including the vice presidency. Now, charging a sitting high official, especially one from a major power sharing arrangement, with treason is actually rare and politically sensitive for obvious reasons. Yep. But in all of this, it's the same thing we deal with this when there's power tussle between men in power, and people have to deal with the consequences. The people of Sudan are still in this fragile state. I mean, they've been independent since 2011, but they haven't escaped these cycles of armed conflict, these cycles of division, political instability, a lot of ethnic tension. The 2013 war between these two men devastated the country, unaliving perhaps 400,000 people and displacing millions.
Wow.
This peace deal of 2018 was supposed to build shared governance, but the implementation has been really slow. It's been incomplete. People are still contesting it. Many areas have weak state presence. Militias remain active. People are concerned about alignment of loyalties. It's just sad. And economically, South Sudan depends heavily on oil revenues, which makes up a large portion of government spending. Now, there are reports of corruption. There have been reports of misuse of funds. There are limited, people are unable to access public services, there's food insecurity, there's a humanitarian crisis going on. But while all this political, people dragging power without consideration for the impact on the people, I will never understand it. This is such a young country. This was an opportunity for South Sudan to thrive. And every time we look in the news and there's a story on South Sudan, even though we know there are great things that also come out from the people, because the people are a resilient people, it's just really sad when we see stories like this, especially from, we complain about interference from the West and all that, but these are people in power that lead these countries or claim to lead these countries, and they don't care if they tear down the country, provided their power is secure. Tragic.
Very tragic indeed. Listen, I would say this is a very complicated and tumultuous relationship, right? I mean, the leader of a civil war, power sharing with what seems to be the opposition, right? This is what I'm understanding. It sounds good symbolically, but then you find situations like this. I don't know what the solution would or could have been or should have been, but I hope that this isn't true, because if it is, which it seems like in all likelihood it's definitely a possibility, then as you mentioned, the political instability that follows is a bit worrisome. What do you do next, right? So anyway, in any case, I hope that they, South Sudan is able to solve their internal conflicts, and then are able to fully maximize the resources that they have growing beneath their ground. Okay, so that concludes the headline stories that we wanted to review today. Maybe we can go into some of the other headlines from around Africa for the folks back home to check out on their own.
Yes, in Malawi, there's an upcoming election that's drawing a lot of interest. Of course, the president, Mutharika, he's seeking a comeback, in spite of the discontent. President Mutharika used to be, because Joe, we talked about this offline. Let me not get ahead of my thoughts. So President Mutharika used to be a president of Malawi, and he's seeking a comeback. Matter of fact, a lady who was also president after the president in power passed on, she's also seeking a comeback. But Mutharika has been positioned as the strongest opposition to the incumbent President Lazarus Chakwera. There's a lot of discontent in Malawi. We talked earlier about Malawians, going to South Africa, risking their lives with these foreign nationals who promise them all these lofty dreams and things like that. Because people are desperate, unemployment has been high. The economy is not just thriving, contrary to what Chakwera had promised before he came in. So this election is getting a lot of attention, and we're just going to keep our eyes on it. And hopefully they do right by the people. It's, corruption-free. But I'm very interested in how this turns out.
As am I. Hopefully it is corruption-free. I really do hope so.
Yeah.
All right. What else do we have on the list of headlines that people should check out?
Yes, speaking of election, we're now going to go to Tanzania, where several opposition presidential hopefuls were barred from contesting, which clears the field for the ruling party and leaves only minor party candidates that are not that much of a threat to Samia, President Samia. I think that's her last name, right? Anyway, people are concerned about electoral integrity. But yeah, initially the court had lifted the ban on one of the opposition leaders, and then they rebanned the opposition leader. We've talked about Tanzania quite a bit on this show, but yeah, hopefully the people's will prevails.
Hope so. Yeah, and just to remind everyone, this was the female president in Tanzania, and we're just hoping there's not more of the same, just with a new face, right? So Fingers crossed. Any other stories?
Yes, in Zambia, a court has convicted 2 men. So there's this witchcraft act, I think it's from 1914, where it's a clearly colonial era. This is a colonial era law, which is so ironic. So anybody who is accused of using supernatural means against any leader gets convicted. And in this case, there's an allegation of a plot to unalive President Hakainde Hichilema spiritually. And obviously there's a lot of debate around this because the allegations state that it was the brother of the opposition who actually hired these 2 men to mix up some charms and whip some stuff up to unalive the president.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that's pretty common. Specifically, I've seen this discussed a lot in West Africa for like chiefs or even local municipality people who are running those areas. Yeah, I didn't know there was anti-witchcraft laws on the books. Does feel colonial era anti-witchcraft because I think African religions were described as witchcraft by the Europeans. So, yeah, I guess we'll follow the story and see what happens. Any other stuff? Any other stories? That
just a quick correction. Samia Hassan is the name of the president of Tanzania. Samia is not her last name. Hassan is. But now to South Africa, the government has reopened. I'm excited about this story. Matter of fact, I plan to release a story on that today or tomorrow on my platform. Check it out. It's about Steve Biko. They have reopened the case into the 1977 mysterious unaliving of this man, who was an iconic Black consciousness leader and was unalived in apartheid police custody after years of calls from justice, from activists, and even his family. So there's been a lot of public fascination around this. And I'm curious as to what happened in room 619 that day, because the apartheid regime claimed that, he banged his head against the wall, or, the typical lies. But we need that case reopened, not just reopened, and, we get all the clout and it trends. This is about closure, not just for Steve Biko and his family, but for Africans. We need to understand what happened in that room.
Well put. Are there any other stories to review?
Speaking of, still in South Africa, and speaking of public fascination, have you seen the show on Netflix? I'm trying to make you watch it so badly. And I know Joe is like, girl, if you don't leave me alone with that. It's called Beauty and the Beaster. That show is actually number 4 as of last night when I was watching it. Yes, I watch it every night before I sleep. And I can't believe I'm doing that. But Beauty and the Beaster, I've been following this story for years. This is actually about a man, Thabo Bester, who has been dubbed the Facebook R word, fill in the blank. This man escaped from a maximum security prison, got rearrested dramatically. Imagine faking your own unaliving. A burned corpse. Child, you can't make this stuff up. So I can see why the world is fascinated by this story. It's sickening, but it's also very interesting, And watching him speaking, you can tell that this man clearly is not okay mentally. But I think the big story here is that he actually tried to get Netflix not to release the show, but they did. And now, I knew the story in passing previously, but now I really, really know the story. So I can see why he was trying to stop that.
Yeah, look, he unalived someone. Then, to escape prison, he burnt a body. Don't know if he unalived that person to burn it, but it was a body. Pretended as if it was him in order to get out. He's clearly not there mentally. And I do hope that justice is served. Yes. All right. So any more stories that we have for today?
That would be all.
All right. So with that, those of you who are watching to this point, want to thank you for watching all the way through to the end of the live stream. If you haven't already, head over to Gloria's platforms, either follow and or subscribe. It's a free way to support what we're doing so we can continue to do things like this. If you're on Gloria's platform, you can head over to Authentic African, like and subscribe. We normally go live on Thursdays. Next Thursday, we will not go live. So it'll be the following Thursday where we will be doing a catch up for the previous 2 weeks. So we'll ensure that you won't miss us too much, because we definitely will come back with the stories of the day. So with that, thanks again, Gloria. And thank you guys for watching. See you guys all in the next video. Bye, guys.
Thank you, Joe. Bye-bye.